All right, what can I help you with?
Hi. So I'm just trying to gain some insight on what I can do in terms of becoming a better interviewer or in terms of getting a job in the software industry. I used to be a cancer researcher, but now I'm transitioning over into the side of software and trying to get new jobs there. And like I've been applying for jobs, but most of them have said, "Oh, we're impressed with your skills, but you're not really what we're looking for." And of the interviews that I have done, um, most of the responses that have gotten back have more in line being the same. Like, you've done a good job on the interview, but we're not going to be moving forward with your um, application at this time. And so I was just wondering if I can get any help or any feedback on what to and how to essentially get that conversion rate up from applying to a job into getting to the interview and then going past the interview stage.
Yeah, it's a common response. It's frustrating because you don't know why. One thing you have to understand, you might, but just for anyone listening, it's a lot of companies need to protect themselves legally. There's a reason why a lot of information is withheld, but that doesn't mean that you can't fish for more information. And I find that is a really good technique, very powerful. I did it when I was interviewing for dev jobs. It was very helpful for me. Did you ever just follow up and say, I was really looking forward to this. I completely understand, but would you be willing to give me some advice for future interviews? Have you ever followed up like that?
Yeah, so there was a couple of interviews last year that I did in which I actually did get the chance to follow up with them. And one really stuck out to me in that like I made it past like the general interview. We went into the technical interview side. They gave me the technical assessment. I did it. I passed it, but they didn't move forward with the candidacy. And I asked for any feedback, and they were like the response I got was shocking in that they said, "We were surprised that you were able to complete the assessment." Because I never went to a coding boot camp. I'm completely self-taught. Like I do have like a comp sci minor, but that's about it. Like I've been coding for a while. But yeah, they were completely shocked and they wanted me to go through. They said that some of the packages that I used, they would have expect a more advanced person to use this. And in the end, they boiled it down to, how do you know how to do what you're doing in these programs when you have a biology degree instead of like a comp sci degree? And I didn't really know how to like maneuver from there. And that's what initially prompted me to start writing. Let's start doing technical writing pieces. But yeah.
What was your second follow-up like?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Did you say, I thought you said you had you had multiple companies that followed up, or was that just one?
So that was the first one. The second one, they didn't really go into much detail. They said that, like during the interview stage, they said that they had another candidate who was also in the same stream that I was in. Like there were 3 interviews, and we were both I'd interviewed 2 out of the 3. And I guess they just decided to move forward with the other candidates. They didn't really go into any specifics. They said that if another position opens up, then I could contact them, and then we can pick it up from there. But that was about it.
Gotcha. So without seeing your interviews, it's close to impossible to like completely assess this, right? So I'm just going to be kind of poking holes.
Yeah.
With your first one, it honestly sounds like they were trying to hire someone that they could pay less, to be completely blunt with you. I don't know why else they would have said something that explicit and basically mentioned that they were very surprised that you were more qualified than what they expected. It sounds like they probably thought they'd have to pay you what they couldn't afford or what they didn't want to pay out. Without knowing more about that, that's the best I can come up with.
Understandable.
you can get kind of a common pattern of companies want longevity in an employee. When you come from something that is perceived to be paid well, because I don't know what your previous salary was, but I would suspect it was higher. Why would you stick around for something that's probably going to pay less, right? I think salary, like there are a lot of things that are going to go into longevity in an employee staying in a company, but salary is one of them. Yeah. And a lot of people will live a lifestyle that will essentially raise to what they're making. And this is kind of just a shot in the dark. Again, I haven't seen the interviews, but like usually when you hear this like overqualified, et cetera, they don't want to pay you as much as you probably are worth, or that you might find down the road. You might switch to another developer job and get the salary that you actually are worth. Yeah. Or they think you're just overpaid coming into this career, because there are a lot of people that will career transition and it'll kind of just be a little bit of a shock because their lifestyle hasn't adapted to them lowering their salary. Because this is an uncommon scenario, because software engineering generally pays more. Yeah. So a lot of conversations, it's like I said, it's hard to say, but that could be the reason. And maybe you can alleviate that concern. You don't even have to address it directly. You can just understand that might be a concern. And I think really just showing like your passion, your interest for the industry, like why you're changing, like, is your story very powerful? Does it make sense? Because I'm telling you, all these hiring managers, they filter out so many people that are just coming into this for a pay check. Yeah. And it's like, they have hundreds of people to filter through. It's like, so that's what they're used to. And maybe you're not selling your story well enough. Maybe it's not as good of a cultural fit. Sometimes it's easy to say that maybe you didn't even perform well on the technical assessment. I'm saying for other interviews. I know that one was pretty good, but it's easier to like focus the reason on a technical portion when it isn't always a technical portion, because then we go back to everyone wants to sue companies. So they're going to tighten up and they're going to button their lips and not tell you what it is, unfortunately. Yeah. And so sometimes you got to create that connection as quickly as possible. You strike me as someone that, I don't know you. This is like, I just met you, but you're not as socially awkward as some other developers that I've met. I feel like you can probably, have a casual conversation. Like we just had one before this, right? Yeah. So sometimes building that connection as much as you can make them more open to feedback down the road. But I think like a lot of it is just like really fishing for that feedback in a non-pushy way. Where like you're not showing any sort of resentment for getting rejected, but it's just about, I just want to do better, right? I love software engineering. What can I grow with? So that could be a possibility. What do you think about that? We'll pause there for a second.
I think that's good. Like I do have to work on marketing myself more. And that's what I'm trying to do with this new blog that I've created. It's like it serves as a platform for me to create content for other people, but it also allows me to put my own personality and my own touches on it, so that like it comes across more, that like my interest in the field comes across more. And it just provides another platform for hiring managers or anyone in general to go see what I've been working on these past few years and days. And
yeah. So we can go over all the basics just to make sure, because again, shorter episode, but the technical blog is a really good long-term solution. It's really good for creating transparency into your developer process. So hopefully you're sharing that, but also what you're interested in, right? Like you're not just building cookie cutter websites. Hopefully you're building projects that you're actually interested in, right? Maybe that project gets a user base. That'd be really cool if you build it. A few people use it. They're like, hey, Nonso, it'd be really cool if you built this feature out. I'd love to see it. Oh, okay. Let's go ahead and add this to the list. And I'm going to maybe come up with the requirements because it's a bigger feature. Like that's the whole agile process in itself. And a lot of developers underestimate that. But so you're building projects. that solve real problems, that are interesting, that show your personality. I think sometimes people will focus too much on projects that are relatable, like they'll kind of build some cookie cutter template, like e-commerce template.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of companies really like they have to filter out so many tutorial based e-commerce templates. Like it's just a meaningless project. It's good for practice. Yeah. It's a low value portfolio project, right? Yeah. So I guess like real quick, like what's your favorite project?
Apart from the blog, I would say Clueless Words. It's a word game that I created summer of last year. It's like Wordle, but instead of like you guessing a 5-letter word, every day there's a secret word. And when you go on the website, you're given 3 synonyms to start to that secret word. And you have to use those synonyms to try to guess what the secret word is. And you can also like go for new hints. And with each hint you choose, you actually do lose a life. You got 6 guesses in total. With each new hint you use, you'll lose a life. And yeah, it's a really simple game, but it's really fun. Like the really awesome thing that I found out about working on that project was how time zones actually work in terms of scheduling things to go off at a specific time all around the world.
Yeah, I mean, dealing with time zones as a developer is a whole other animal.
Yeah. Okay. It was really cool. But yeah.
Yeah, when you talk about it, you seem like you genuinely enjoyed working on that project. So when an employer asks about it, like they're usually going to ask about your favorite project, right? Your passion project, they might call it that. Do you describe it like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. How many jobs have you applied to?
Over 200.
Okay. How many have reached back out and they wanted to follow up with a phone interview at least?
12.
Okay. How many of those interviews did you go to any like technical portions right away?
Yes. So for 3 out of the 12 companies, I went to technical portions. And then the rest was just like the initial interview.
The rest was the initial interview. Okay. How many? So, sorry, correct me if I'm wrong. So, 9 phone screenings without the technical portion initially, right?
Yep.
How many of those went into a technical interview?
How many of the 9 went into a technical?
Yeah, so like they did a phone interview, then they're like, okay, we're going to go ahead and follow up. You're going to do our next round of interviews.
Oh, I see. 3.
Okay. Gotcha. Do you, I don't know, I get this funny feeling that it's more of the jobs that you're applying to. So a couple things that could be happening. Your resume doesn't really resemble what you can do in an accurate way. Or you're applying for companies and positions that really have nothing to do with your expertise. And sometimes companies, they kind of like, they really treat it like a numbers game sometimes. Like they have a super efficient process. Kind of sounds good. Couple buzzwords. Let's bring them in for a recruiter interview. It's really hard to say. When you put your projects on your resume, how do you list out those projects?
I start off with the technical portion and I use the buzzwords, but I also put a description of what I accomplished in those projects, like what the goal of the project was, and then what I accomplished, and then what I learned. Like when I was doing software way back when, I did run a what was it? It's slipping my mind now. I was doing freelancing. And so it was just for small businesses around the area that needed a small website. And so I did I built some of their websites for them. 2 years ago, I actually started a startup in the education space, focused around creating an educational tool for undergraduate students to help them study better in school. But other than that, those are the things that I've put on my resume along with the projects that I've worked on.
Gotcha. With your personal projects, do you list that as experience and mention that you're a software engineer at that project name?
I put them as, so I have my experience section in which I have the company that I started, my freelancing, and then the last one is when I worked at the university. And then underneath that, I have the header of personal projects. So like I make it explicitly clear that these are personal projects, but.
Interesting. I get this feeling that you're being seriously considered going into the technical portion. It's, man, this probably isn't. So what I probably could do, I don't have time to do it, is like we would go through your cover letters, your entire job search strategy, and it's like we'd do like scenarios of like you going through the interview process, me asking you questions, and like we could like really get down to the nitty-gritty details. I'm not convinced that's what you should focus on, getting that particular, like if you weren't getting any responses like that's probably like where we would go.
Yeah.
I think people are underestimating how shitty the market is right now. And your stats tell me that you're seriously being considered for some of these companies, especially if you're making it to the technical round. On, at least a portion of them. It sounds like you're competing with, a few candidates at the end, maybe 6, maybe up to 12. But like, it sounds like they're just choosing the best person for the job. And I get this feeling you'd probably do better 3 years ago. That's not like a great thing to hear, but what I'm saying is I almost don't want to recommend that you change anything drastic, because the stats tell me that you're probably doing most of what you should be doing right.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if just continuing to push forward with companies in the manner that you're doing, continuing to like, I'll just give you like a few tips.
Yeah.
But like continue working on personal projects. Majority of your time with that should be spent on, it's personal project work, right? Probably a little bit of data structures and algorithm stuff. Make sure you're comfortable with that. You're just going to be tested. It's a reality, right?
Yeah.
Like if I do like an 8-hour day, I usually recommend like hour lunch, hour data structures and algorithms for people, 4 hours of project work, 2 hours of networking, which go to meetups, participate in a hackathon. There's recruiters there, right? So you have this right idea of, you have this technical blog, which is a very good long-term solution, it's transparent with your process and who you are as a person, hopefully. But you can also be transparent in a much quicker way by participating in hackathons, by going to networking meetups. I feel like you almost have the skills, like if they're bringing you that far in, you have the skills for a good chunk of companies. I could be wrong about that. Again, we'd have to test on that. But I get the feeling like you would really find networking very, very powerful. And so putting more emphasis, like continue, writing a blog post a week if you want. I think consistency is really good sign. It's a good signal. Yeah. But it's majority of project work and getting yourself out there, meeting other developers, participating in a hackathon. Do you want to share what city you're in or area?
I'm in Toronto.
Toronto. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. We just did a live stream where we went over a lot of the job posts. Wow. Well, there were a few job postings in Toronto that we were looking through.
Yeah.
I would say continuing to push forward is your best bet. Tell me more. Give me something else, because I get this feeling like I want to say this and then I want to hear your opinions. I meet developers that are doing a lot of the right things, and what's required is just more time. going forward. It's more effort, it's more applications. And I find that when I give them advice to like detour and try something different, sometimes they have worse progress, and it's just not worth it. So my big recommendation is, heavy project work and getting feedback, trying to get that feedback when you get that rejection, creating that connection so you can do that. But yeah, I know I said a lot, so
yeah. I agree with that, and thank you for the feedback. In terms of like doing more community outreach things, that's something that I do want to focus more on this year. I actually did participate in my very first hackathon last year. It was really
congrats.
Fun. Yeah, it was really fun. I didn't know what to expect going in, but like the project that we built, and meeting new people and communicating with a whole bunch of developers in that time span, it was really fun. And it is something that I would want to do again. And in terms of the projects that I've honestly been thinking of doing, like building out a more larger scope project. That's the thing. Like I'm not sure as to if it's worth putting in the time to build out a larger scope project, or if it would be better to build out smaller scopes but more projects, because I feel like the larger scope project it allows you to expand on one problem, and it gives you the ability to learn a lot more in terms of one, the technologies that you're using, and two, how and why you're using those technologies to solve this problem. Whereas for a smaller project, if you do a to-do app, it's a to-do app. Yes, you do learn some things whilst you're doing a to-do app, but I feel like the larger scope project, it just gives you that ability to, because it has a larger scope, it just gives you that ability to think about the development process more, and think about why you're doing what you're doing with the technologies that you're doing.
Yeah, well, first of all, you're making my job easy. So you're leaning on essentially, I 100% agree with all that. And so a variety of projects, it's really good for an exposure to solving different problems, and it's good for practice, right? Because I think when you have bigger scope projects, it's so abstract sometimes, and as a newer developer, it's very hard to break that down into a bunch of little pieces and modules so you can build that giant project up. But you're at a phase where you've built some smaller projects, and I would argue the game that you built is probably a little bit more basic, right? Compared to what you probably can do now. And so I think that's a great idea. And you'll see sometimes coding boot camps will focus on a variety of projects. I actually find that coding boot camps that will have you build like a very, like, it doesn't even have to be like complex technically, but a very, they have you build a SaaS product. They have you build something that could be a real product that gains a user base, that makes a company money. That's an app that people would actually use. It solves a real problem. And you have that one idea and you're expanding on, you're building more features. What that also says is you are developing this mindset of a user-centered developer, where you are actually thinking about like what users want from your app. How is it going to solve their problem? And does this feature that I'm building, do I need to really bring this much complexity in it? Or do I like have to create this like awesome reusable pattern for this tiny little feature that the users might not want to do? Or can I have a conversation of like, you know what, I just want to push something quick out. Let's get some feedback, right? And now we can expand on this feature, right? That's the mindset. That's a user-centered developer. That's a mindset of an agile developer. It's a mindset that is relatable, directly relatable to professional developer experience, especially when you're working on a product. And so I think you're right on the money with that. Focusing on that big project, it's going to stand out a lot, and a lot of people are scared of stuff like that. So if you're not, I think that's a great idea.
Awesome. Yeah, because I don't know, I've gotten into escape rooms recently, and
nice.
I want to build out a puzzle online that multiple people can play at the same time. But we'll see where that goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so depending on the types of jobs that, you know, you're going to apply to, if you apply to front end positions that like really value, maybe you have animations on those websites of the companies, so you can do a little company research. And these are the types of companies that you do want to work at. You could put a little bit more focus into the front end, the animated side, to make it like really gamify it and just create a really smooth experience where, you know, if it's back end heavy, maybe you're solving like a really complex problem around, I don't know, just some sort of memory operation with managing like 1,000 different users and like the complexity of the different puzzles that are going to be served out. Like, you know, you're at better than me, but you also want to think about what kind of jobs do I want to work at? Do I want to work at front end positions, back end positions? Do I want to work at a company where like their website is gamified? That would be fun. Yeah. That seems like a fun culture for me. Let's go ahead and, you know, gamify, because you wanted to build another game and you already built a game. So maybe that's a culture that is going to resonate with you and you're going to resonate with that company. Because I can tell you the first position I got, my old boss, he saw me on Twitch. He's a gamer. I'm a gamer. Yeah. Like right away we related on, and we talked some video games during the interview. We also talked some React during the interview. So when you build your projects that solve a real problem, I would also seriously consider what kind of problems you actually want to solve as a professional developer. And you'll find that companies will usually find that more relatable. You're going to stand out to those types of companies. Yeah.
No, I agree. And I think that's what I'm doing with my blog. It's not a traditional blog in the sense that it's not something that I just write text down and I throw a couple pictures. With this blog, I've added interactive components inside of it. Like, it's using React, but it's also using a format called MDX. It allows me to put React components inside the actual Markdown itself. But it allows me to now create these like puzzle pieces or exercises that people could do while you're reading the blog. And at the end, like, they can take this short little quiz to see if they really do understand what they've just read. Because another thing is, I'm really big into education as well, and seeing how people can better learn new things. And so that's the project that I've been working on for this past couple months.
Okay, that's interesting. It's good to recognize in yourself. Mention education, applying to developer positions in the education space. My second position was essentially not tech education. It was education in a tech space, and it would be delivered to a lot of schools in different districts. It was just a SaaS product for a lot of different schools. So, you know, you might consider applying to companies like that. But yeah, you're saying a lot of the right things. You are. Continue pushing forward with the heavy projects, focusing on a single project can really serve as a product, like it looks like a product, is going to be very strong for applying to product-based dev positions. And I think your inclination to network and put yourself out there more, I think it's also a good move going forward. Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of like a short and sweet episode, but hopefully there was a nugget of advice in there for you.
It was helpful. Thank you so much.